Hey everybody, welcome to the week for August 24th. This week on Rising, we had a lot of great guests. One that stood out in particular was U.S. Berkeley Professor Zaid Jilani. He talked about America's role in China's rise.
I think you can make a case that this increased trade with China did benefit China. I mean, they brought hundreds of millions of people out of poverty in China. Unfortunately, when U.S. politicians were making this case in the 1990s, they were saying it was going to be good for America. Right? They were saying that it was going to lead to an export boom from the United States, and many of them made the case that there'd be more political freedom in China now than there was then, and there hasn't been any. If anything, now China is the world's most powerful dictatorship with the most sophisticated surveillance state.
Zaid made the point, I think, really effectively that you got to pay attention to who has been right about these things over the years. And I mean, one person who's been consistently wrong that he brought up, and we played some clips in that interview, is Joe Biden, who was one of those people who thought that bringing China, normalizing relations with them, was going to be a great thing for America. It's been a great thing for some American businesses, but in terms of the industrial Midwest, in terms of people losing those sort of good middle-class factory jobs, in terms of having a race to the bottom in terms of wages and labor standards, it's been a disaster. So really interesting. Zaid is an incredibly smart guy. He covers a wide range of topics, and it was great to have him here and get his thoughts on that. I also had a really interesting conversation with Bernie Sanders' senior advisor, Jeff Weaver. We split this one out over 2 days. The first portion of the interview was kind of the horse racy stuff. What are you looking at? What do you make of how Elizabeth Warren's doing? Why do you have such strong support with Latinos? We talked about that. But then on the second piece of the interview, I wanted Jeff to share some of the stories. He's worked with Bernie for 30 years, and I wanted to get some of that history and perspective on the rise of Senator Sanders, what it was like in the beginning versus what it's like now. Here's one of his favorite moments that he shared with us about Bernie.
We'd stand on a corner, and as Bernie got better known, more people would see him, just like they do now, right? They'd mob him or honk. So we would stand on a corner, I would hold a sign, he would wave, and then we would try to get, at first we were just trying to get any reaction, right? A wave or whatever. So eventually we got enough that we would only count the honks. Like people honk their horn. Not if a wave didn't count. We got mooned sometimes. We got the bird. We got other things too.
Mooned.
We got to get mooned one time. So what would happen is we would stand at a busy intersection, and there'd suddenly be this flurry of people honking, right? And it would get louder and louder and louder. And then Bernie would wave more and more furiously as they honked more. And then he would yell at some point, "Honk-a-mania!"
I could just imagine that. We pulled some really cool clips from the archive for that as well. One of Bernie, I think in like 1987 in Burlington, railing against corporate-owned media, sounding exactly the same way he sounds right now, railing against corporate-owned media. So it's kind of a fun interview, looking back and also using that to project into the future. This interview to me was a really important one, really very special. Tanae Stover spoke with us about a possible strike by airline caterers. She is an airline caterer. She was actually evicted from her home because she doesn't earn a living wage. She works right here in D.C., Reagan National Airport. They have authorized a strike, and negotiations don't seem to be going particularly well. So this was one we wanted to keep an eye on. Let's take a look.
We're proposing $15 starting off, health care and a pension. Most of the workers all over make as less as $9 and some change.
Wow.
While we're still living in low poverty wages, American Airlines is making $1 billion in profits from off of the work that we do. The conditions there are not in its best. They have workers still working in the coolers with 40 and below degree temperature. Some of the conditions of the trucks where some of the drivers transported isn't in its best conditions. We don't have all of the equipment to successfully complete our job. So we're just asking for American Airlines and SkyChef to hear us out, but they haven't been doing those things.
It takes so much courage in America to fight back as a worker for what you and your colleagues deserve, which is just, basic dignity, health care you can afford, a living wage, and for Tanae to go that step further and also share some of her personal struggle, which, it's a very vulnerable thing to do. So grateful for her coming here and making that case. Definitely make sure you check out that interview. You can find all the full interviews, those and so many more, on YouTube and on Hill TV online. It was a great week. I hope you have a great Saturday. Tomorrow, we're going to have some of your questions that you submitted on Twitter. We will answer. I will answer. I'm missing my buddy here. I really do miss him. He'll be back, though. But I will answer your questions via tweet tomorrow. So make sure you check us out on YouTube. We'll see you soon.